What is up, everybody? In today's video, we'll be talking about what is it that you can do to make the most profit you can as a contractor. Guys, the term contractor is big and loose and they throw it around. You can be a general contractor, remodeling contractor, doing insurance work. You can do trim, paint, drywall, mechanical work. You can be a flooring contractor or roofer, or you can be in restoration. Like, what is it that you can do? Well, guys, there's profit margins all across the board. In this video, I'm going to show you from handyman all the way down to your niched out business. How do I know? That's what we did at our business, guys. Basically, if you're a contractor and you want to make more money, and you want to see how we went from making 5 and 10% all the way to 80% margins. You heard that right, 80% margins. I'm going to show you everything we did in my business if you stick around in this video. So if you're a contractor and you want to make more money, you don't want to miss this. Let's go. All right, guys, so as we get started, do me a favor, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button and drop a comment down below. Let me know where you guys are tuning in from. All right, guys, so as we get started, I want to tell you that I am speaking from experience here, okay? I was born and raised in Alabama, in Birmingham, and I have worked my way through the trenches, working as an employee, doing trim, paint, framing, drywall, like you name it. I have worked my way all the way up through the trades, specifically through residential construction, but we got into commercial stuff too, and even environmental. So this video really speaks near and dear to me because I'm telling you, this is like how I've lived my life from the age of 17. And so like that's 30 years. I'm 47 years old as I've recorded this video, and I've learned so much. And some of the things I did, we weren't making any money, and all the way down up into the end, we started making great money. And so I want to walk you through all that stuff. But here's what I want you to know. There's a lot of contractors out there. Some of them do really well, but a lot of them are flat broke. Most contractors are flat broke. And I want to be able to show you how we went from being flat broke to basically being what you probably essentially call rich. At least we make more money than anybody I ever knew as I was growing up. So, but maybe that didn't mean a whole lot. But anyway, that's what we're going to talk about today. So I want to break all this down. In this video, we're going to look at kind of 3 different things. I'm going to break down and lump everybody into general contracting because that's going to be like a vertical. And then I'm going to lump everything else like in trade contracting. And then we'll do like specialty contractors in the end. So we're going to look at those 3 lumps, okay? General contractor, trade contractor, and specialty contractor. And specifically, we're going to talk a little bit about what is an example of each of those. What kind of margins can you make? What kind of money can you make? And like, what are the pros and cons? What will make you want to get into one or out of one, etc. So let's just start right at the top. Well, I say let's start at the top. Let's probably start where most people begin, and that's as a trade contractor. And so as a trade contractor, what I'm going to call this, like if you own a handyman business, you're kind of, and you're doing the work, you're a handyman is your trade. That was one of the ways that we started, or that I started after I got out of my, in case you guys don't know, I had a record deal in Nashville and I was a country singer. And so after I got out of my record deal, and I was a home builder before that, but I worked for another company. Okay. So I was like a contractor. I knew how to do GC work, but I hadn't really ran my own general contracting business yet. So once I got out of the entertainment business and came off the road, I started a handyman company, and we did like paint and drywall or whatever else. And this was also around the 2008, 2009, 2010 era. Like, so we were coming off the economic crisis. There wasn't a whole lot going on in anything in the economy back then. So that's also kind of what led us to get into the insurance world. But we started right there first, because when you're offering handyman services, you're basically telling people, hey, I'll do anything that you can or anything that you need. Let me make some money. And that's where we started. And that's the most simple path to start and take. And so I was actually doing the work there. And so as the owner operator, I would do the work myself, right? And so I can't remember, like the first year or so, I might have made 150, 250 grand, something like that. But that's like gross revenue. And so, and I kind of hovered there for a few years as I kind of worked my way, learning through what I was doing in business, if you will. And so, but anyway, handyman's a really easy place to start because you're finding anybody and be like, hey, do you have a problem? Yo, I'll solve it. So like, that's what we did. All right. And so I would say if you're trying to get into the contracting business, that's one place to start. Okay. But then right after that, then you get all the other stuff like drywall contractors, painting contractors, flooring contractors, mechanical contractors, HVAC, plumbing, etc. All of those fit into the trade contracting business. And you're really going to break it into 2 categories. You're either going to be doing retail work or you're going to do wholesale work. And I've got another YouTube video that I did a few years ago. You should go look it up. I think it says retail versus wholesale. It's a really good video. But it really talks about like whenever you're starting a business, you need to figure out what are you going to do and how are you going to get the jobs, okay? And you're either going to be a retail client where you're going to work directly with the end consumer, and that would be an example of like, as a handyman, I'm working with the homeowner's hiring me. Whereas if I'm doing wholesale work, I might be a painter, but I'm not painting for Miss Daisy or Jane Doe or John Doe. I'm not painting for the homeowner, but I might be painting for a builder, okay? Or a commercial contractor. So that's a wholesale type relationship. In other words, the end user is another contractor, okay? So for what that's worth, that's your retail and that's your wholesale, all right? So which one's easier or better? But either way, like you're gonna figure out your niche, right? It's probably easier easier to get a bunch of work doing wholesale work. Well, I know it's much easier. You get one builder, two builders, three builders to start giving you jobs, and you can get a ton of work, and suddenly you're busy. But you get stuck right there, and it's hard to get much beyond that. You can't really scale that business very much. If it was, then there would be all of these there'd be all of these these paint and drywall companies, franchises all over the country, and they're just not. And the ones that are franchises, they're teaching you to contract with the end user, not with the builder, not with a wholesaler. Why? Because there's not enough money in it, the business model. So anyway, it's easier to start in the beginning working as a wholesale contractor, but in the end, you want to be a retail contractor where you're working for the end user. And why do you not want to just start working for the end user? It's hard to get in front of enough end users to pay the bills because you're having to go find a new customer, and a new customer, and a new customer, and it's just hard to do all of that estimating and negotiation. Whereas if you're getting one client and they're going to give you a ton of work, you find one apple tree that makes a whole bunch of apples, and then that's how you get a bunch of apples. You find an apple tree. Whereas conversely, if you're doing this in the retail world, each job is going to be in and of itself. So you got to have a lot of referrals. So it's harder to get it going. But your trade contractors, that's an easier place to start. But a lot of times you're going to be the one doing the work, or you're going to be one out in the field. But that's where most of the guys start. And a lot of those guys will make it up to 300 grand, maybe 400 grand. Some of them make it up to $1 million, but their margins are going to be really, really low. There's not many of those trade contractors that are putting 200 grand in their pocket, even on $1 million. There's just not. And if some of you guys are watching this video and you say that you are, that's great. But most of them that do, they're still working in the field and running the business. And so for me personally, if I'm making $1 million, yes, I want 200 grand in my pocket, and I don't want to be going to work anymore. And it's hard to do that type of work. So trade contractors, that's really kind of where you're at. So now let's zoom out a little bit. Most trade contractors like to grow up, okay, to become a general contractor in many cases. Now, why would they do that? A little more scale. You're able to, number one, you're not doing the work anymore, and you're leaning on teams of other people. So typically you have a little more freedom, and you can do higher volume of dollar amount, right? Like you can do millions of dollars. Like if you're a new construction builder, you could do $10 million in revenue, okay? But their profit margins are super, super, super low. And this is going to go back to this. Some of you guys may be construction builders. Most of you that follow me are not, but I'm just telling you, after doing this for a very long time, the new construction builders, those guys are lucky to make 10% margins. They are lucky to make 10% margins. So in other words, if they sell $10 million of homes, they're not putting $1 million of profit in their pocket. Those are really tight margins. They're big dollar amounts. So what you do is you sacrifice margin when you get a big high dollar amount. And so that's what the contractors are doing in general contracting for new construction. Now, I never did do the new construction as like the owner. Okay. We did remodels and additions and stuff like that because we were a little more specialty and niche. And so why did we do that? Well, number one, it takes a lot of capital too to do $10 million. And I didn't have that capital. And the other barrier to entry is figuring out how to do land deals. If you're a general contractor, you want to do new construction, the biggest barrier to entry is getting the deal of the land. And so you have to have a lot of money or a lot of financing to buy, 20, 30, 40, 50 lots. And a lot of these builders or these developers are not going to want to sell to a small mom and pop. They're going to sell to the big tract builders because they want to unload 50 to 100, 200 lots, and they have the money to do it. Okay. So it's really hard to break into that market. So anyway, that goes to that end. All right. So for the new construction. Now the remodeling world, that one's pretty good. One of the problems in remodeling is there's a lot of other guys that offer remodeling services, like the old fellows, the old 50-year-old guys that they're also still working in the field, and they will do it for a far lower dollar amount. So those margins be a lot lower too. But typically new construction, somewhere around 10%. And then you would get into your remodeling, you can go like 15 to 25% probably, something like that. But again, the other thing is you're not doing this huge volume. You're not doing, it's hard to do over $1 million of remodeling work, of just remodeling. Now, if you're doing additions, that's a little different, remodels and additions, but that's kind of more like custom construction at that point, right? And so that might be like design, build, architect stuff, but that's going to be really specialty niche. And I'm going to say that's probably outside of the scope of this video because a lot of the guys that do the design, build stuff, a lot of them have like an architectural tie or they're partner with an architect, but it's kind of a different bag, right? So for whatever that's worth, all of their money is not just in the building itself. They'll get kickbacks on the architecture stuff as well. So new construction, 10%, remodeling, maybe 20%. The downside of the remodeling is the profit margins will still be low. And honestly, the jobs are kind of a pain in the butt. When you're working inside of somebody's house, it's kind of a pain in the butt. But what we did, we started as a trade contractor, then we made our way into remodels. And we eventually figured out how to quit pricing against other contractors because a lot of people want to get 3 bids. And I'll say this, until you figure out how to get out of the I want 3 bid argument, then you're going to give out bids against other people. And bro, your life is going to suck. You have to figure out how to sell to a budget rather than selling to Tom, Dick, or Harry. Which one of you guys are the cheapest one? Because you will never, ever, ever make it being the cheapest. And if you do, your life's going to suck and you ain't going to be rich, period. So a lot of the guys that I grew up with, like in Alabama, they would do like that specialty, like remodeling contracting stuff, but their mindsets are not right. They would never charge 50%. And when I say 50% margin, that's where if the job is cost you $10,000 $10,000 as a contractor, you are doubling it. So you're charging them $20,000. When I first started out, normally here's how most contractors do it. If it's a $10,000 cost, they think 20%, they'll put 20% markup on it, and that'll be a $12,000 job. It's like, okay, it's a $10,000 job. I'm going to keep $2,000, and they're going to call that 20%. Bro, that's 20% markup, not margin. I want 50% margin. That means you multiply it times 2. And if for some of you guys that are listening to this, you may think, dude, that's criminal. I'm like, I think Verizon charging you $455 for a phone line that like doesn't cost them anything to hook up your line, and they make $450 a month profit either way. Like, that is criminal. So for whatever it's worth, I'm just saying, if you guys want to make a lot of money, this is how you got to do it. You're going to have to change your mindset. And I'll tell you this, for me personally, once we started getting our pricing right, we started doing that, I really, really felt guilty. I felt guilty. I was like, but I can't charge them 20 grand for this. Like, I could do it for 12. I'm like, well, you could do it for free too. You know, like, I'm just saying, you got to get over that. And that is a barrier that, like, that's a mental thing you have to get over. But if you want to get over that, then you follow me, because I'll help you get there. Okay. I'm just going to tell you this. Some people pay the most because they want peace of mind knowing they're getting the best. And if you are the best, you're obligated to charge the most. Okay. So I'm just telling you, 50% margin is what we would aim for on our construction stuff. And that's because we stopped selling to, like, what is the price that you want to pay for this, to where we would get into a budget. So I'll tell you real quickly how we did this. So we did a feasibility study. I called it a feasibility study. So what I would do is I would go out there. Well, before I even went out there, first off, when you called me for construction, I would answer the phone. I'd be like, hey, this is Shane. How can I help you? And they would say, hey, I want to get a quote for something. I'm like, okay, how'd you get my number? Right? Like, because in construction, especially in remodeling, dude, it's so hard to get good contractors. Like, not only was I not going to go give you an estimate, you better be coming from somebody that I know and like, or I'm not going to work for you. Like, if you really think about it, who wants to get an $80,000 remodel and can't find someone to give them a warm referral? Crazy people, that's who. Like, if you got 80 grand to go spend on a remodel and you can't find anybody in your network to refer a good contractor, you might be crazy, okay? I'm telling you, that's exactly what happened. So here's what I would find. I had a couple good builders, and when I say, like, yo, I told you I charged 50% margins, like, I was already super expensive, but I knew, and I hung out with other builders that would never entertain taking the projects that I did, because they were reasonably high margin, maybe 20%, but they did multi-million-dollar projects. Remember that design build stuff I'm talking about? That's what those guys, those design build remodel guys, they're going to put $1 million pool or a $2 million pool onto an 8,000 square foot house in Franklin, Tennessee. Those guys aren't taking these $80,000 remodels. They're like, what is that? And those are the ones that I would take from those guys. Okay. And so in other words, like, his name was JB. Okay. JB Hill in Nashville. What's up, JB? If you're watching this, dude, JB was a big mentor of mine. And like, so he would give me jobs and refer stuff to me. And I knew that if it was coming from JB, like, these people had money and like it was going to be a good deal. Now I knew I had to take good care of them, because JB would freaking make promises he almost couldn't keep. But like, you want to talk about quality of work? It doesn't matter how much it costs. He did it and did it right. And that's what I learned too. Jump through a wall of fire, let your name be everything for those people, and make it right whatever it takes. Do the best work, demand the best work, and do it right. And I'll tell you this is a quick lesson for you guys. Every now and then I would get frustrated. I'd get pissed off at a client or something. And I would call him. I'm like, JB, what would you do here? And he goes, well, tell me what happened. I was like, well, we put in this ceiling. We did all this work. And this was like, I don't know, I think this one in particular was like a $30,000 porch or something we were doing. Looking back, it wasn't even much money. But back then it was a lot of money for me, because I was just getting started. And we had like stained all the ceiling, and the ceiling looked great. We did it right and everything. And the homeowner didn't like it. And I was like, dude, I think they're crazy. I did it right. It's all really nice stuff. And he said, well, what's the problem? I said, she doesn't like it. And he was like, what's it going to cost to fix it? I said, I don't know, $8,000. He goes, tear the shit out, put it back, tear it out, put it back. And I was like, what do you mean tear it out? I was like, tear it out, put it back. And like, that was his mantra. Does that make sense? And he always said, turn it in, do it better, do it right. Hopefully this resonates for you guys. If helpful, drop a comment. If it's not, say, hey, this is dumb. But I'll tell you one other thing about JB. There was another guy that he used to work with, okay? And this one guy, Steve. So Steve would always come in on his projects ahead of time and under budget. So Steve and JB work for the same company. Steve would come in ahead of schedule and under budget, and the people were always pissed. Like, they didn't really like Steve, and it wasn't a great experience. Yes, it was cheaper, and yes, it was faster, but they didn't love the experience. JB blew every budget to hell, and it took twice as long to finish. And at the end, they were always raving about him. Does that make sense? Like, how does this work? And that's partly because his mantra was tear the shit out and do it again. And like, I'm just telling you guys, there's something about that. Make it right, whatever it takes. So we're getting off topic, but hopefully that's helpful for you. Okay. Just do great work and keep doing it again. Cause I got news for you too. A client that is really pissed at you is probably not going to pay you anyway. You're really, really, really better off of doing it again and hoping they pay you than not doing it again and demanding they pay you, because they're going to fight you in court and you ain't gonna get all the money you're thinking about. So anyway, hopefully that's helpful. The remodeling stuff, you can do well in it, okay? But I think for us, once I got into contracting at that point, I got out of the trade stuff and I got into the general contracting. I hired a project manager and I was paying him probably somewhere around 80 grand. At that point in my business, he was probably making as much as I was, to be honest. But yeah, I paid him, and I think we were stuck at like the $400,000 mark, roughly. I think we did like 150 or 250 or something, year one or year two. And then we were like at 4 and maybe 4 for the third year, but we were stuck around the $400,000 mark for a few years. I hired the project manager, and then at that moment, I went directly into sales and networking, and we went from like 400 grand to like almost $2 million within 12 months. And that goes back to like finding what your sweet spot is, right? And for me, that was building relationships and doing sales. Yeah, anyway, trade contractors grow up to be general contractors in many cases, okay? I'll tell you this, but notice those profit margins, that's not 80%. Those profit margins for us were 20, 30, and 50% in some cases, okay? Now you're making 50% margins doing remodels. That's really good. More than 90% of anybody in contracting, more than 90%, none of them make 50% margins, okay? And we did it because we sold to a budget doing feasibility stuff, and I would give them a price frame about what it was going to cost, to do their project. And I would just say, hey, in order to kind of really finalize what this thing's going to be, we got to go through here and do a selections process. And I would charge them a set amount of money to go through the selections process, and I would give them one lump sum turnkey number for everything. And the only reason why that allowed me to sell to a budget is because I already told them it was going to be between $28,000 and $48,000. 28 and 48. Most of them like this are about between here and here, and they'd be okay with it. And I'd say, if you're okay with somewhere between 28 and 48, we will go through the selections process, and that'll be $1,800. And you go through this, and if you guys wind up using me, I'll take the $1,800 out of the end price, which I just built it right back into the price anyway. And so I would just go through, and then, but the reason why I took the $1,800 deposit, why did I do that? Because I knew they weren't getting a bid from anybody else. I knew they were done getting a bid from anybody else, because ain't nobody going to hire me for $1,800 to get, I think like they paid me $1,800 to write them an estimate. That's what happened. They paid me $1,800 to write them an estimate. And every time I did that, I got the job. I think there was one time I didn't. One guy wound up not going through the project, right? And I still got like a $2,500 thing. It was like for a detached garage or something. So, but either way, learn how to get paid for your estimates. So Shane, if you're making 50% margins doing remodels, why would you do something different? Because yes, I was making really good money, guys, at that point. Well, I'll tell you why. And the problem was this. I was still in the sales process, okay? And so they still knew who Shane was, and I was still an integral part of my company, and nobody could sell it the way I could sell it. And so I had people that could execute it, we could build it out, but I was still in the sales process. And I wanted to get out of that sales process because when we had operational hiccups, they would run around my project managers and they would come back to me. They would come back to me because they knew who I was. And I wanted to fix that, okay? And so I got in, we were doing reconstruction for other restoration companies too, right? We were doing recon for other restoration companies, and we were profitable at it, and I wanted more of that. And so anyway, that's how I got into water damage restoration, is I knew that if I wanted to get more construction work, that's actually how I did. I wanted to get more construction work. And so I kind of left that part out. We were doing build backs for like other local restos in Nashville. And I liked that because I never met the homeowner. Like they would just send us the scope and my PM would go knock it out. And those homeowners never knew who I was. And so when you couple the retail construction work that we were doing with the reconstruction work, I started to see that the recon work, they never called me because they never met me. They never knew me. So I wanted more of that. And I couldn't get enough of that. And I wanted to get out of them. Like, so the pain I was solving wasn't a money problem. It was, I wanted my time back. Okay. And I wanted to get out of the day-to-day of that part of the business. So we eventually bolted a water damage division onto our reconstruction division, but suddenly we started competing with the contractors that we were messing with. So that brings us into specialty contractors. This is the third type of contractors. We talked about trade contractors, right? Skilled labor, roofing, mechanical, etc. And we talked about general contractors, new construction, remodeling, stuff like that. And now we're talking about specialty contractors. And this is going to be like insurance related contracting, environmental contractors, right? There can be guys that do environmental work and water damage restoration specifically. And so these are the places that you get 80% margins. Now, you don't all get 80% margins. And when you don't know what you're doing at first, you're going to fetch 50% margins. But once you learn how to double your price, which I'll show you how to do that too, go to workwithshane.com. I'll show you how to do it. But we wound up getting 80% margins in our water damage restoration. Why? Because if you think about it, we wound up, and when we would show up for a property that was damaged by a flood or damaged by water or a broken pipe, we would set a bunch of equipment. We would go home and our equipment would bill while we slept. up. Does that make sense? And so this is where you make the most money. And I'll say this, nobody starts in water damage restoration. They all end up there. And I'm telling you this here because if you're a contractor and you want to figure out where the most profit is, bro, I'm telling you right now, it is in water damage restoration. That is the highest profit margins. Now, fire, you can make a lot of money in fire too, but the margins are going to be way lower. It's way more volatile, and the business looks a lot different. The business looks a lot different. We did fire for a bit. I didn't love it. There are a lot of reasons why. Insurance companies are freaking crooks, and they really drive the process on a fire. On a water damage related project, they're still involved, but you can be in control if you know how to be in control. So water damage restoration, the specialty contractors, these are the ones where you'll make the most amount of money. The other environmentals, you could be doing asbestos, stuff like that. But an asbestos contractor, those guys, while they could do great, a lot of them, they go back to the same mindset. It's going to be, well, if it costs me 10 grand, I'm going to charge $2,000 or $3,000 markup, and that's it. Guys, that is broke. If that's what you're doing, you ain't making no money. You ain't making no money. What I'm telling each one of you to do is this. If you have a company and you're a contractor, you need to be making 50% margins. 50% margins. And that means whatever your cost is, material and labor, multiply it times 2, and there you go. How many of you are already making 50% margins? Drop a comment down below. Let me know where you're at. And what does that mean? Your cost, material, and labor, all in, multiply it times 2. Is that what you're doing? Yes or no? And if you think I'm a crook, call me a crook. I don't really care. I'm a rich crook, and you ain't a rich crook. You a poor crook. Whatever you are. Like, I'm just saying, go take care of your friends and family. You know what I'm saying? Make that money. Make that money. Look, I'm just saying, dude, you're working for rich people anyway. A lot of these people are rich. They got more money than they got sense. Money ain't a problem. These margins, somebody's making it in every market. It's just probably not you. So hopefully this has been helpful for you guys, okay? You'll come in, you'll start as a trade contractor. You might grow up to be a general contractor, all right? But then all roads eventually lead to specialty contracting. And again, I love restoration. That's how I got to restoration, because it is recession proof. And here's what it allowed me to do. It allowed me to get out of the business. So the calls came into my company. They didn't know who Shane was. And then someone not named Shane answered the phone. Someone not named Shane, project manager, went out there and signed the job. Technicians did the job. And then we signed it. We dried it. Okay, we did it. We handed it to our recon division. We did the rebuild. Nobody knew who Shane was. Shane was in the Bahamas. Like, that's what happened, guys. And that's how it worked. And so look, there's a lot of other challenges involved with it, but profit margins are there. Okay, so hopefully this is helpful. And if you guys want to know more about, like, hearing more about the path, follow more of my YouTube stuff, but go to workwithshane.com. You want to get on a call and see if we can give you a 30-day blueprint on how to launch a water damage restoration division. I'd love to be able to help you. So anyways, appreciate you guys. We'll see you in the next video. If you guys enjoyed that video, I've got 3 things for you. First off, there's a couple of other videos somewhere on the screen. You can click those now to go watch more content about growing your restoration company. Number 2, if you haven't already subscribed, click my face below and that will subscribe you to the channel. And finally, if you would like for me to help you grow your restoration company, go to workwithshane.com, put in your information, and let's get on a 15-minute call. We'll see you then.